Good morning, Galaxians, and welcome to another live edition of the Galaxy CDs Rocks and Flips Reseller Talk podcast. My name is Ryan, and I'm going to be your host. Man, it has been a wild week or 10 days in the world of reselling, and I thought we would just get together and have a little cup of coffee and a conversation about all the things that are going on, and you can let each other and me know which of the things have affected you and to what extent or degree. We're going to talk a little bit more about Poshmark, whose no good, really bad, terrible week continued over the weekend with some technical issues that they appear to be blaming on third-party software. And if you weren't aware, there was a internet-wide outage yesterday caused by a bug over at Cloudflare, which caused a lot of problems as well. So we'll get into that a little bit as well. So a couple of good mornings. Kapow Eagle, hello. I hope everyone is doing well and health and in Q4. Let us know how things are going. Last week for me, I'll go first. Last week was one of the worst weeks I've had in quite some time. Way off the boil on all the sites. And then this week has been gangbusters. Yesterday, between Etsy and eBay combined, I did about half of what I did all last week in one 24-hour span. So really good day yesterday. Still a little bit down so far for Q4, which has left me essentially flat year to date at this point with whatever's left, 6-7 weeks to go before the year is out, which is hard to believe that the year is already gone. Lord Jake Ryan, good morning. Big Dre Graphic Tees, hello, welcome. Den Decor Depot, good morning. Just sold a Disney Lionel O-Gauge train set for 300 bones on Etsy. eBay is meh. Etsy is booming. I had the same experience. eBay picked up late yesterday, but the first half of the day, Etsy was 80% of my business at one point yesterday. Now, it ended up balancing out a little bit more, but Etsy was fantastic for about 8 hours. And then kind of dwindled back down to its normal pace. But it was like every 25 minutes or so, I was getting an order over on Etsy. It was wild. That old Lionel O-Gauge train stuff can be really, really valuable. I usually, if I'm out and I see some of that and it looks like it's any kind of condition, that is one of the kind of random things that's not media that I'll take a look at. Jeff Zenick, good morning. Thanks for coming by. Spending Sense, hello, good morning. Thanks for coming out. Den Decor says, very backloaded Q4. Had one-on-one with eBay's team to assess my store. I learned a good bit. If you don't mind to share, what kind of tips and suggestions did they have for you on things that they saw in your store that they thought and you agree might be helpful? So with that, let's get into a little bit about this Poshmark issue over the weekend. So if you don't sell on Poshmark, you may have missed this, but they had a massive situation where Poshmark sellers' listings were being deleted, sometimes in numbers in the hundreds. And of course, Poshmark recently instituted the new excessive delisting policy, where you can be suspended if you have too many listings that you remove within a certain time frame. And of course, having hundreds of your listings deleted triggered that thing to kick in. So sellers were getting, in some cases, multiple letters, emails from Poshmark saying that their account was in danger of being suspended because they were deleting all these listings. Wow. On top of everything that they had going on last week, that was the last thing that they probably needed. And it was, sellers were pretty heated, to say the least. Poshmark said, we are working on an issue affecting some sellers who use third-party services to access Poshmark, which caused unexpected listing removals. As a proactive security measure, we are resetting passwords for potentially impacted accounts. Many sellers did report on Facebook and on Instagram that they had gotten that notice from Poshmark that they were being requested to update their account credentials. Impacting listings, they said, had been restored and any temporary listing restrictions had been lifted. Some sellers, as of yesterday, claimed that that had not been the case. I haven't seen anything. I've been too busy this morning to really look into it any further to see if it's caught back up. But I know there were a couple sellers that were still missing hundreds of listings as of yesterday. Sellers still trying to figure out who to blame. The primary culprit appeared to be Sidekick, although they, for their part, said they confirmed their system did not delete any listings, while Poshmark simply refers to a third party in their various statements. It sounds like possibly someone got into Poshmark through Sidekick somehow without actually being in Sidekick and was using seller credentials to wreak havoc somehow. So that was really messy. Let us know in the chat, or if you're on Team Replay, if this affected you. Has it been fixed? How bad was it? It sounds like it was very, very messy. And of course, this is the last thing you need anytime, but especially in Q4, a week out from Thanksgiving. So that was no good, to say the least. Again, let us know in the chat how that went for you. Let's see, Den Decor. So they recommended 12 photos per listing, free shipping. They've also revamped newsletter tools. I have not ever used the newsletter. Let me know in the chat if that's something that you have done and if you've had any success with it. I've seen some sellers talk about it, that they've used it and didn't really get much lift from it, but I'd be curious if you had. I know we talked about it a couple of weeks ago when we were going over the listing quality report, that the big recommendations that I saw in my report and the feedback that I got both in the live chat that day and subsequently in comments later was that those were the two big things that that report also was recommending: more photos and free shipping. Those are big pushes. I guess I don't really understand the push for the free shipping. And contextually, there are times where the push for additional photos just doesn't make sense either. There were people talking about, postcards, which is essentially a two-dimensional item where you could make the argument, I guess, you could take really up-close pictures of any various flaws or stains or creases, but really a couple photos, 3, 4 is probably enough, and it was recommending tons of photos on stuff like that. So I'd be curious if anybody else has delved into their listing quality report. Are they seeing anything different than we saw a couple of weeks ago? Are there some actionable recommendations, or is it essentially the same two things that we all saw that day? Free shipping and more photos. They also mentioned the first 4 words of your title are weighted the heaviest in search. That's interesting. And I do see, like, I try real hard to, most of my stuff is media. So artist or author and or title, those are, I kind of flip back and forth between one and the other. But I see a lot of sellers that their first word is vintage, or the first word is a year that an item was published, or something that wouldn't necessarily, it's important, but I don't think it's the most important thing. I would think in search, again, for media in particular, author, artist, title are kind of the big rocks. And then everything else is like secondary to support that, using things like vintage, antique, rare, 1962, hardcover, whatever, book. Just doesn't seem like the way to go. And especially given that eBay is saying those first 4 words are especially weighted in their search results. That's really interesting. Den Decor continues, use the listing quality report to find Google rejections, complete all tasks. If you have a store subscription, it makes a difference in search. Top rated matters, as well as free returns. I have all of those things. The only thing I haven't done on my store is you can put up like a seller introductory video, which, considering I've done like 1,000 videos on YouTube, it wouldn't be that hard for me to do one. I've just never done it. It's the only thing that is not completed on my store. Let me know if you're here in the chat. If you have a store, have you done all of those tasks? I think there's, what are there, 8 things. Curious also if anybody else ran that report, if they were seeing many, if any, Google rejections. I know Brandon Media Picker, when he was here, excuse me, for that show. I think he said he had 4. Then I think you only had a couple, if any. There were not a ton. I didn't have any. So I'd be curious if people are finding that they have a lot of rejections from Google. That just doesn't seem to be the problem that it was in years past. They also sent a useful stale listing report after the call to focus on. I assume that's like older listings that are not getting many views, and obviously have not sold. Fern Flips, good morning. Thanks for coming out. Playroom, always good to see you. Thank you. They did not push promoted listings and made a point to state it was not a sales call. Well, that's good, because a lot of their marketing material, a lot of the recommendations that they make, does push promoted listings. Even as you're listing an item, there are times where it will pop up and say whatever X percentage of items in this category are promoted, to try to get you to promote those items. So they're, in most instances, they are really pushing that. So that's really interesting that they avoided going down that path. That's good. Do the video. They say it matters. I completed them all. That's an interesting. I guess I'll have to do it. I wonder what the rationale is behind that. I mean, it puts a face, I guess, if you do like this sort of introduction, rather than like maybe a video of your store, or like a highlight reel of some listings, or you do a video that points out how many things you sold and your feedback. I mean, there's a million ways you could do that without having your face on camera. So how did you do your video? I'd be curious. Playroom says, I can't seem to look at the report. I tried to download it and nothing happens. That's interesting. It does take a while. It's a pretty big report. If you were here for the live, it took, I don't know, 30, 45 seconds probably before it popped up to download. So I did have someone else that reached out to me that said they couldn't find it at all. So I don't know. eBay had said they were rolling it out, so maybe not all sellers have it yet. But I don't know why, if it's showing available on your screen, why it wouldn't download. Unless your listings are so good, there's no recommendations. If you let me, I can post a link on how to sign up for the call. It takes 45 minutes. I'll be honest, I don't know if I can do that from StreamYard. Den says that use my intro video I have on my channel, 30 seconds of my old BM storefront and inventory. There you go. So obviously, I think my intro is much more specific to the podcast, so that probably wouldn't work for me. But that's interesting. If you've got footage of you had a brick and mortar store, or you have video of if you've done videos on any of your listings, that might be another opportunity to create a video. So really good stuff. I appreciate you sharing that. The other issue from yesterday that we want to get into here is the Cloudflare outage. Don't know if you experienced that. I had a couple of sites that I use pretty regularly. Canva and Pirate Ship were both down yesterday morning. Pirate Ship was just down. It popped up and said they were doing maintenance, which they had done maintenance overnight. So I just assumed initially that that was just a continuation of that they'd run into some kind of problem. But then I tried to get into Canva, and that didn't work either. And it did say that there was a Cloudflare issue. Their CEO did explain exactly what caused the outage. Cloudflare outage took out a large swath of the internet Tuesday morning, with users unable to access numerous sites and services, including X, ChatGPT, Spotify, YouTube, Uber. Obviously, I just mentioned a couple that I had issues with. I did not have any issues with YouTube or Spotify. So again, let us know in the chat. Did you have some problems? The co-founder and CEO, Matthew Prince, apologized in a post late Tuesday, stating that the outage was the worst the company has experienced since 2019. In the last 6+ years, we've not had another outage that has caused the majority of core traffic to stop flowing through our network. On behalf of the entire team, I would like to apologize for the pain we caused the internet today. They explained that the outage had been caused by an issue with the system it uses to protect websites from DDoS attacks. We let the internet down today, he said. Here's our technical postmortem on what happened. On behalf of the team, I am sorry. Essentially, they said there was I think they called it a latent bug, which popped up and caused cascading failures. So as time went on, it got worse and worse and worse. The bot management system failed. It includes an AI model which scores traffic requests whenever there's attempt to access a website protected by Cloudflare's bot management. The AI generates a score to determine if it's likely to have been from a bot. In order to do so, the AI considers various features of the request, which are held in a feature file. This file, they said, is where the issue occurred. It refreshes every 5 minutes to keep up to date with evolving bot behaviors and is used across Cloudflare's entire cybersecurity network. However, they implemented a change to the underlying query that generated the file, which caused it to duplicate information a large number of times. This made the feature file larger than typical, triggering an error in the system. So let us know if that one affected you. I don't know how long it was down. In my case, Pirate Ship, I tried to access it at about 7:30 in the morning. It was intermittent until about 8:30, 9 o'clock, and then it seemed to be okay. Canva did take a little bit longer to come up and start working. As I said, I didn't have any issues on any other sites that I use, but let us know in the chat if that's that affected you and where. Then says, my local gas station's credit card machines were down. I did see where this did affect some payment processing systems as well. So we forget, and obviously it just happened a couple of weeks ago with an Amazon Web Services server that had an issue that brought down significant chunks of the internet. All of this consolidation and all of this use of the cloud, be it cloud storage, or in the case of this, a cloud service, which tries to regulate traffic, which in theory, at least to our benefit. But when these sites have issues, which inevitably they will, they're still, at least for now, coded by humans who make mistakes. In the future, they'll probably be coded by AI who makes mistakes. So these things are just going to happen, but it's become increasingly apparent through all of the consolidation and whatnot that it's become more and more problematic. A small mistake in one place can have downstream effects on dozens, if not hundreds or more of sites, which can affect the entire internet. So again, anybody else who had issues with that, let us know, and please chime in and let us know how your fourth quarter sales are going. On that note, just a programming update. There will be no live next week. It's the day before Thanksgiving. I imagine we all have better things to be doing than sitting around talking about this kind of stuff. So I'm going to take next Wednesday off. We'll be back the following week with a live. There probably will be a show over the weekend for you, but then Decor says it looks like they may have closed the clinics page. I assume you're talking about eBay there. They have been on a run of changing, dropping services. The concierge service they kind of got rid of. Lots of things that used to be available, pages, reports, community services that they used to offer. It was interesting in the chat that I was on last week about the promoted listings thing. The reps asked a question about where people got information for eBay, about eBay, and most people said YouTube, which was interesting. But they mentioned a particular page on eBay that I can't recall the name of. Frankly, I'd never heard of it before. But apparently it was a page where they put up a lot of information about things going on at eBay. Clearly, from a marketing standpoint, they were not doing a good job of recommending that site because it didn't seem like anybody in the chat had ever heard of it. And they asked about it. And has anybody used this page? Has anybody ever gone to this page? And they kind of made the comment as we were talking about it, maybe that's a page we should just get rid of. Where my thought process is, maybe it's a page you should put a little more front and center. Maybe it should be in Seller Hub, in that little box where they have all the other stuff. If you've got a page where you're actually putting useful information, but nobody knows it's there, get it a little more front and center. Don't delete it because it looks like nobody's using it. So you can let me know how you feel about that, and whether or not you would fully trust the things eBay is saying about some of that stuff anyway. Although this appeared to be more kind of a news aggregate site. These are things that they're doing, why they're doing them, and so on. There was a lot of talk about the eBay for Business podcast or whatever it was called, that another opportunity to learn about what eBay was doing that they got rid of. What's that been now? A year and a half ago. And a lot of sellers mentioned that they had listened to that podcast religiously and it just went away. There was some talk that they were going to run that up the corporate flagpole and see if maybe they could reincarnate that in some form, maybe not exactly like it was, but do 10, 15, 20-minute episodes once a week, once every other week, whatever it is, to kind of highlight the things that are going on behind the scenes at eBay. I think that would be incredibly useful because right now, unfortunately, we're all kind of relying on each other. We're relying on people like Liz at Value Added Resource or the Steiners over at E-commerce Bytes to, dig through eBay's terms of service every couple of weeks and see if there have been changes or updates that people need to know about and that kind of stuff. And it's a really difficult way to keep on top of what's going on in eBay. I mean, it's good for my show because that's the kind of stuff that I cover. So it's a good reason for me to be here, I guess. If they could get rid of me altogether, or maybe they could hire me and I would do it. Den says there's a bunch of stuff in there. eBay for Sellers was a great podcast. Yeah, that was one that I listened to as well. Useful information. They were entertaining. They, like you mentioned earlier, it never felt like necessarily they were shilling for eBay. They were just talking about what was going on, what they saw, how you could use those things, whatever, a new tool or whatever it was, to your benefit in your store. So I thought that was a good one. I feel like that's something they should have, whether it be the podcast or a YouTube channel or both. I think it would be incredibly beneficial for them and for sellers alike. A lot of people, as we talked about, they don't read all those notices that eBay puts out anyway, but they will watch or listen to a podcast or a YouTube video kind of in the background while they're doing their work, while they're doing listings, while they're packing orders, whatever it is. So that would be a incredible way for them to communicate, hey, this thing is coming, we're working on this, we've heard your feedback on that, whatever the case may be, to get that stuff out in front of sellers. And again, like we've talked about before, meeting sellers where they are. Sellers don't have time necessarily to read every article on eBay or on Value Added Resource. They're relying on other parties to condense that down into like manageable bits of information that would be useful for them. Why they don't do that themselves, I don't know. Let me know what you think. What else is going on out there, sellers? I'm seeing, again, a lot of people talking about online that Mercari has been really, really good for them. Let me know what your numbers look like over there. I had a great week on Mercari 2 weeks ago. Last week, I sold one 2-item bundle on Mercari. I haven't sold anything so far this week over there. So again, Etsy and eBay, both very strong for me. Mercari, crickets. Let me know what other sites you're doing well with. I've seen a lot of people kind of complaining recently about some stuff going on at Depop. If you're a seller on Depop, let me know. How are things going over there? Their CEO, as we talked about a couple of weeks ago, is about to take over at Etsy, which owns Depop. So things that are happening at Depop may follow, good or bad, over to the parent company. Nose Attic, welcome. Thanks for coming by. Let us know how you're doing. How's fourth quarter going for you? Were you caught up in any of the various technical shenanigans over the week between Poshmark and Cloudflare that we just talked about? Doing well on eBay and Etsy. Stronger numbers keep coming in, primarily in games and toys. That would be, I would think, a fantastic category for this time of year. That's the kind of stuff people are looking for. I've talked about I'm a media seller, a book seller primarily, and a lot of times books are not. It's hard to know what vintage or antique book to buy, grandma or mom. And my business typically is a little better in January than it is in Q4, in December, because people get gift cards and then they go buy what they want, where toys, games, those kinds of things would be super, super strong. Glad to hear things are going well for you as well on Etsy. We talked about a couple of weeks ago with some of the changes happening at Etsy. They have continued, at least globally, at large, to struggle. Their sales are down. Their user base, both buyers and sellers, seems to be down. Some of that is by design, things that they've done to make it more difficult, like the store setup fee and so on, to try to weed out scammers, counterfeiters, bad sellers, that sort of thing. But you can see it in their numbers that it has caused them to have a bit of a struggle. So it's encouraging to hear from individual sellers. Between you and me and Den, that's 3 just in this small group today that are doing really, really well right now on Etsy. So maybe they're starting to turn the corner. Kat is Hapanak, if I said that right. Welcome. Thanks. That's a name I don't think I've seen before. Sold a few items on mercari last week, but the lower priced ones, which seems to be the trend. Again, chime in the chat and let me know what your thoughts are. But I've talked about previously where if I feel like there are kind of 3 I sell on Mercari, eBay, and Etsy, and it seems like it's 3 different kind of economic stratus. Mercari are really the bargain hunters. eBay's a little bit of everything. I'll sell some $3, $5, $8 books and some $100 books. Etsy seems to be the higher end, the customers with more discretionary income who are willing to spend a little bit more to get the thing they want. So that's kind of my take on it. Let me know what your feeling is. Kapow Eagle says, is advertising on Mercari working? Anyone listing there? I don't do any like ads. I did set up, I did that short video a couple of weeks ago where I set up the seller bundles, where I put in the percentages and set that up. And initially I had I had good response to that. I sold 2 bundles almost immediately. I did sell another one last week, and now it's back to essentially being nothing. So has anybody, speaking of advertising, I don't watch much TV, to be fair. Have people started seeing ads on TV for any of the sites? Depop, Mercari, Etsy, eBay. I know eBay's got a big campaign. Are you seeing those ads? Are they impactful? Do you think they will be effective as we head into kind of the meat of Q4? Like I said, I watch almost no actual television. So Playroom says, it asks me if I'd like to switch apps to view my report. I click yes, and then nothing happens. Why would it ask to switch apps? Are you doing that from desktop or on mobile? I, to be fair, didn't look to see if I can even find it on mobile. I downloaded mine from desktop. Which are you on? Just out of curiosity. Miss Lachey, welcome, and thank you for the thumbs up. Quick shameless plug. If you're getting something out of this and enjoying the show, please do me a favor and hit that thumbs up button. If you're not currently a subscriber to the channel, please consider doing that as well. And for all the recent subscribers over the last couple of weeks, if any of you are in the house this morning, thank you for signing up. Picked up nearly 100 subscribers in the last couple of weeks, which is a huge number for me. Rapidly approaching 2,500. So very cool. Thank you for all of you who have signed up, and for, again, your continued support, especially when I go through those phases where I'm not as active as I probably should be. I appreciate the fact that you continue to come around and hang around and wait for me to put something out. Playroom, again, let us know if you're seeing that report on mobile or desktop. And if it's desktop, I'll go back in here right now live and show you where I find it and how it should look, and you can let us know if that's what you're seeing. I try to 72-hour time limited sales on Mercari, and that has helped me in the last few sales. I believe, Miss Lachey, you do that as well, don't you? If I remember correctly, that those 72-hour sales have been good for you. So let us know. That's not something that I have done much. My personal experience with sending out offers on Mercari was that I don't get many responses, and I I just don't do it as often as I probably should. On eBay, it's super convenient. In the morning, I look and I see how many things are eligible to be sent offers, and I just check the boxes and send out the bulk offers, and then I get on with life. So I just have found it to be easier to do there. But Miss Lachey, thank you. I appreciate it. You got to have people that have your back. The world is a interesting place right now, and it's always good. Again, I talk about all the time to have this community where you guys support each other, not only the channel, but you come here every week and you answer each other's questions in the chat, and you give tips and advice and recommendations and things you're doing or things you've seen, like Den Decor talking about his experience with the eBay store evaluation. A lot of useful little tidbits in there, and I hope all of us will take something from that and go back and look at our stores. Maybe I'll shoot that video this afternoon if I get time. I got a Kroger delivery coming, so I don't know. But to take some action based on what we've shared with each other. It's one of the reasons I like doing these. Lord Jake Ryan says, I hope someday they have a bulk sale thing and not have to do them one by one. Yes. Being able to do anything like that in bulk, it's one of the things I really appreciate about eBay. You can update listings in bulk. You can, if you use business policies and you need to make a change to a business policy, you do it one time and it applies to all of the listings that are in that business policy. They do make it's difficult to get set up sometimes, but once it's done, it's so easy to go back and make changes in bulk using some of the tools there. It's one of the areas I feel like Mercari in particular, and maybe to a lesser extent, Etsy could really take a few things from eBay. Miss Lachey says, I've done a few sales on Mercari, nothing spectacular. Promoting listing every 30 days helps the most. Nancy Bigham, thank you for coming by. They do. Help me out. Who do what? I get to rambling and we lose context there. Miss Lachey also sent out offers after the item has accumulated 3 to 5 likes. Right, and that's another issue that sellers have had with Mercari and the way they do offers. Every offer has to be 10% lower than your last offer. So if you make an offer too soon, then you have to subsequently make additional substantial discount offers for people who come along later. So it almost incentivizes you to wait until there are multiple people that like that item, rather than, every time, for instance, on eBay, every time somebody likes or watches or whatever an item, it shows up in my thing and I'm able to send an offer. And then tomorrow, if somebody else likes that same offer, I can still send that same, whatever, 5%, 10%, 15% off offer. I don't have to then reduce beyond my lowest last price. So it's under Sell Faster. Is that on desktop, mobile, both? They have a bulk sale thing. See, I need to get in there. I am talking about Mercari. So yes, because there is on eBay, you can do all kinds of, again, in bulk. You can set up, I do every month, big clearance type sales by age and price point. You can really drill down. You can select by category. You can either set up rules or you can select items in bulk. I mean, there's just so many ways to create sale events over on eBay. Again, it's almost overwhelming. To be fair, when I first got in there, I was like, oh my gosh. And then as soon as you figure it out, of course, they change how it works, but that's something else altogether. Don't know about Mercari. Yeah, see that I've got to look. I tend to, maybe that's why my results are what they are on Mercari. I just feel like with the number of listings there, the velocity just isn't there to devote a ton of time figuring out ways to like promote or run an ad over there because you got it perfect, awesome. Let us know what you see in there if there's anything useful. I get a feeling that there are not many active users on Mercari like there were even a year ago. It's a little frustrating at times as a seller, to be honest. Yes, I was talking to somebody the other day. They have an estate essentially that they need to get rid of, and they want to try to sell the things themselves individually. And we were talking about the different sites where you could do it, and Mercari is, for my money, the easiest site to get started on. It's a 10% fee, so it's among the cheapest to get started on. There's no fee to list. You can get in, you can take a couple pictures, create a listing, and boom. If you use their labels, it is super, super easy to be able to sell there, but they just don't have the user base. And things, depending on what they are, can tend to sit there for a very, very long time. Where eBay, on the flip side, because they offer so many tools, because they offer, like we talked about, the item specifics, because you've got to do all of these things to be successful there, the learning curve is super steep to get good quality listings put together. It's very daunting for a new seller to get on eBay, but you almost have to be there because they have got, other than probably Amazon and Walmart, the biggest user base that's out there. And particularly for these kind of unusual and one-off items, that's where those people are, the collectors and whatnot. So you almost have to be on eBay and you have to take the time to figure it out. But it's a steep learning curve. And then again, as soon as you figure something out, they change how it works. Miss Lachey says, overall, Mercari has done better for me than the last few years. I haven't looked. I'll have to go back. I usually do that as I get close to the end of the year. And obviously, when I do my taxes, I drill way down to see how it performed. I haven't looked recently to see how my individual markets have done. My gut instinct is that Mercari is probably flat to down a bit from last year. I think Etsy is probably up, as is eBay, but not by big numbers, unfortunately. Michelle Gunther, welcome. You can do auto offers on Mercari now. That is something that's available. Send an offer. Mercari will send the same offer to all likers that come after that. So there you go. That's one way around that cascading level of discounts that you have to offer. If you set up an auto offer, it will just send the same price to other sellers. See, just what I talked about. Tips from all of you to each other that are trying to do something. Outstanding. Thank you for that. Bundle sales have helped. Yeah, like I said, when I set that up, like almost immediately, within 24 hours, I had 2 sales that were bundled on Mercari. And then I had one towards the end of the week, and then I had one last week, and then nothing. So you can never tell. Like I talked about at the beginning, last week was a pretty mediocre week for me. And yesterday I did almost a third of last week's business in one day. So sometimes I feel like it doesn't matter what you do. It's all up to the reselling gods, whether you have a good day or a good week. It's crazy. We're at about 40 minutes. I generally like to keep these to an hour or less. So let us know if you have anything else that you would like to discuss. I basically just had those 2 kind of key things that I wanted to get into today, the ongoing dramas over at Poshmark. And again, if you're a Poshmark seller, let us know. A, did you have listings deleted? B, did you get the potential suspension emails? And C, does that all appear to be resolved? Are your listings all back? Lord Jake Ryan says, I've not had bundle sales since I set that up. Did have 3 to 4 sales from doing the 72-hour sale on multiple listings. You can never... It's always interesting how different sellers have like different levels of success with different advertising campaigns, different levels of promotion. some do better on one site than another, even though they're selling kind of the same stuff. It's just crazy to me sometimes. You hear stuff like that where you're doing really well one way and another seller is doing really well doing something completely different. Ms. Lachey says, if only eBay could figure out bundling combined sales. Yes. Particularly with offers. I think that's probably the biggest issue because I've got one person right now. I assume it's one person that is watching. I've got a bunch of old. It's a magazine about trolleys and trams. It's a European publication. I picked up a bunch of them for a nickel a piece, selling them for $10. This guy's watching like 13 or 14 of them. I don't want to send him individual offers on all of those because they will all process as individual transactions. And then I'm going to have to figure out how to refund his overpayment for shipping. There's got to be a better way to do those sorts of things. On top of that, you've got buyers on eBay. I have this almost every day who will just do buy it now. And they'll keep going through my store. They'll buy it now, buy it now, buy it now, and they'll do 3 or 4 items all on separate transactions, rather than just adding things to their cart. Part of that probably is just the historical behavior, particularly of older eBay buyers, when that's what you did. The shopping cart was not necessarily a thing, but that can get really time consuming for a seller if you're trying to, do the right thing and refund them all that money they overpaid in shipping. So, but yeah, it would be super helpful if they could figure that out. Got the report and realized I don't care. Yeah. So tell me why. Why is it the data in the report just doesn't look actionable or useful? It's one of the things we talked about when I did it a couple of weeks ago. In my case, I didn't find there to be anything particularly helpful there. It was essentially free shipping. And I think of the 10 things that I had, 8 of them, it was just free shipping. And then in a couple of categories where I felt like 4 or 5 photos were enough, it was telling me I needed to add more photos. So I didn't find that particularly helpful. Now, there was some additional data about the number of sellers, how many photos on average were on those listings, how many of the sellers in this category were using promoted listings, how many were offering free shipping. Those sorts of tools, that sort of data was helpful for me when you're looking at the competitive landscape. Do I need to continue to promote in this category, or can I stop? Do I want to raise my percentage? Do I want to lower it? So I did find some useful information there, but their actual recommendations, frankly, I found wanting. Feel free, anybody else who's run the report, to chime in as well. I put verbiage in my listings to encourage bundling of like items, says Miss Lachey. Big Dre says, eBay says promoted listings can boost sales by 25%, but I use dynamic no cap, so the fee would be 8 to 19. Didn't mind paying because it was only on items that sold with promoted listings. And that's the problem potentially with what's going to come to be in January. Any of those clicks are now going to cause all those items to be counted as promoted in the fees that you pay, which is why a lot of sellers are up in arms about how this works. My experience, as I talked about 2 years ago when I first started doing promoted listings, my gross sales grew by roughly 35% overall. I felt like, and I still do feel like, I am to some degree cannibalizing my own organic sales. I'm sure there are items that would have sold had I not promoted them through an organic search. How many is that? I can't say. My best guess is it's probably something like half. But still, net for me, and I know there's a lot of sellers that just are like promoted listings as a scam. You're just throwing good money after bad. But for me, net, it was solidly a 30% increase. It continues to look like that today. As we get into the changes that are coming in January, do I need to consider reducing my percentage? Because right now, roughly 60 odd percent of my sales come from promoted listings. If that number goes to 90, I'm going to pay a lot more in fees for not really anything additional in sales. That to me is not a good bargain. So we all have some things to think about as we get into early next year. Again, at least it didn't get implemented for Q4 where you would have taken a bath on it. It's starting in Q1 where theoretically you've got some headroom to experiment, taking items or categories out of promoted listings, changing your fee, the amount that you're willing to pay to promote those items in a time where it's a little bit slower and you've got time to maybe dig into the data and you're not going to sacrifice hundreds of dollars potentially in fees to do it. Big Dre says, I quit promoted listings. It took 8 days to get sales. Now sales are really bad, but I'm not going back. And that was a question that I asked when we did that show for anybody who had like walked away from the program, because anecdotally, even years ago, sellers were saying once they did it, and this seems to be true with almost anything on eBay, once you do something, once you agree to sign up for promoted listings, be it general or priority, promoted stores, offsite ad, whatever it is, if you later then decide, yeah, you know what, this just isn't really working for me, and you want to stop, it just absolutely kills your business on the site. And that, there you go. Interested to hear that, because there's a lot of sellers going through that same dilemma. Do I quit the program? Do I change how I'm using the program? What do we do come the first of the year to not be, again, throwing good money after bad by just paying extra fees to not get a lift? Because as we talked about, and other sellers have talked about, overseas where that program is already in place, sellers did not see a total gross sales lift. They just saw more fees. So Pamela Reeves, welcome. I sell on Poshmark and have never used a bot. Only $10 a week, promoted closet. Only manually run my closet over the past year and haven't had any issues with manually deleting sold items on eBay or Etsy. Somebody posted on Instagram something that Poshmark had put up that indicated that even the use of third-party tools was a violation of their terms of service. I know they're very anti the bots, but they want you to be doing that work. And obviously what happened over the weekend is one indication of why sometimes it's probably better to do that and not have your information out on all of these third-party sites. I saw one seller that talked about they had been hit by this and they had seen that it was potentially tied to Sidekick, and they didn't remember ever using Sidekick, but they went and looked, and it turned out that at one point a couple of years ago, they had signed up for a free 30-day trial of Sidekick, and they never canceled their account, even though they've not used it in all this time, and they got caught up in this thing. So there's another tip for you, and probably not this time of year, but maybe come the first of the year when things start to slow down. It might be good to go back and look at any third-party services that you may have signed up for and decide, do you still want them to have access to your accounts, to your listings, to your payment methods, or whatever else they might have access to, and go through and kind of clean out the ones that you are not using or will not use. So I assume that you didn't have any issues with listings being deleted last week as well. Big Dre says, I'm going to focus on listing on Poshmark and Mercari from now on, as well as selling locally. Are you going to use Facebook Marketplace for your local selling? Just curious about that. eBay will get the scraps from now on. And again, that's one of those, when eBay has kind of cut off their own nose to spite their face by having it set up where when you make a change like that, when you decide for your business that it makes sense to not use this program, whether it's promoted listings or something else, and then it triggers a change in the algorithm that completely destroys your sales on that platform. They end up not making any money from you, because you're not selling anything, or like in the case of this, you just abandon the program altogether. You stop selling on the site. You only list a handful of things. Um, their constant problem, as we talk about all the time here, is that they're not growing their user base and they're not increasing their sales, and they're squeezing the existing sellers more and more and more to get more fees, whether it's promoted listings, fee increases, whatever the case may be. But part of it is they're pushing sellers away through things like that. So I'm on my soapbox a little bit, but Playroom says, I'm not going through every listing to tweak things. They're just pushing promotions. That is, again, I've got almost 12,500 listings. I'm not going to go through them all individually to see. Again, the tool is super helpful. You can see kind of by category, less than half the sellers are promoting, and you can make a decision. You know what? I want to stop promoting everything in antique books and make a decision that way, and then try to bulk stop promotions in all those areas. But by and large, sellers especially with big numbers of listings, are probably more likely to either stop the program altogether or just bulk lower their percentage. I'm at 7.1%. I may go down to like 5.5 or something, to try to compensate for the fact that I'm going to pay whatever that percentage is on maybe as much as a third of my sales that I wasn't before. And that, to be fair, I can't justify having paid for because it was probably purchased through an organic link. So I still have questions about the legality of that whole program. But Nose Attic, 11,000 items, and their recommendations are add more photos and give free shipping. I'm number 1 in 2 of the categories I sell in. Not helpful at all. And that was one of the other things that I questioned, because there were a lot of sellers who, when we did that live a couple of weeks ago, downloaded their reports and looked at kind of that same information. And it was surprising to me the number of sellers who were in probably the top 0.5%, the top 1% of all sellers in their category. It's hard for me to believe in a group the size of this, at any given moment, there's 40 or 50 people in here doing this, and maybe only 8 or 10 ran their reports and looked at it. And we all were like in the stratosphere. We're among the best sellers on eBay in all these categories. That almost can't be true. Not everybody can be in the top 1%. And I get, there are potentially thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of sellers on eBay in a particular category that sell one item in that category a year. So maybe there's some legitimacy to it, but it just seemed a little over the top to me. And again, the recommendations felt like they were based on kind of eBay's broad-based things that they always talk about: more pictures, free shipping, item specifics, promoted listings, whatever. Those were the things that they were recommending, which they already recommend. It didn't feel like it was super specific to those items or to that category to me. You can, again, let us know in the chat what your feeling is, but obviously Nose Attic agrees that it was not particularly useful. Again, at least that piece of it. The other data, if you scroll all the way to the right, there's a lot of information there about the number of sellers who are using things like promoted listings and so on. And I thought there were some interesting tidbits in there, but the actual quote unquote actionable recommendations on my individual listings or categories, I did not find helpful. Pamela Reeves sold one of my highest dollar listings last week, a pair of new designer shoes. Congratulations. It's always nice when you sell something like one of the biggest sales ever. That is always very, very cool. I've got one really expensive book that has got a ton of watchers, and I'm waiting for the day that somebody pulls the trigger on that so I can have a big celebration. Ms. Lachey says, I had the same experience with you with the quality listing report, free shipping, and more pictures. Lord Jake Ryan says, have you had sales on Etsy with the share and save, where you have them click a link to bring them into your shop? I've had 4 now this year. I have not. Anybody else in the chat? Are you using that? I've not used it at all. I used to use the old eBay partner program thing because essentially what it was at the time, it waived essentially your fee. Now you just get a small percentage of the sale. That program I also talked about months ago. Again, to go back to the promoted listing change coming in January. So if you use eBay's, it's currently now the ambassador program. They changed the terminology of it, but it's essentially the same kind of thing. You can share a link wherever on your social media or whatever for an item, and if a customer buys that item, you get a certain percentage paid to you. It's essentially an affiliate link. So that's all well and good. But the interesting thing is, if you share your link to that item through the ambassador program, that link, that click that a customer may have done is only good for 24 hours. But if eBay shows a sponsored ad and someone clicks on it, that click is good for 30 days. Why the difference? Why? I mean, I get why the difference, because eBay doesn't want to pay me and they want to make money. That's a rhetorical question. But that, again, is an example of the unfairness of the system. Again, it's their sandbox, but we want to play in it. We got to play by their rules. But I find that super interesting that their own affiliate program, as most Amazon's, is the same way. The click is good for 24 hours. I have no problem with that. But the eBay click, their own showing of that item, is good for 30 days. Interesting. That one goes out to everybody. Have you purchased your turkey? I'm actually not hosting, so no, I have not, but I know a turkey has been purchased. A couple of them, actually. My family is, I've got some family members that are going somewhere else on Thanksgiving Day, so we're celebrating the day after. And I'm going to, on Thanksgiving Day, a friend's house for a Friendsgiving, people whose families are out of town or whatever. And I know both of those events have their turkeys in hand. Nose Addict says, I went through and reviewed promoted campaigns and cut from 8 to 12 to 2 to 4, experimented with my top categories over the course of October and didn't see a reduction in views, click-through, or sales. That, again, is super helpful. So reducing the percentage did not have, at least in this case, a negative impact, where ending the program altogether sent sales off a cliff. So again, we talked about, I think last week, not making emotional decisions, making rational, empirically based, numbers based business decisions, and doing an experiment like this, reducing the percentage and then watching the data. Are my impressions going down? Is my click-through rate changing? Am I making more or less sales? What's the impact of that? That is a pretty significant decrease. From 8 to 12 to 2 to 4 is substantial. It's obviously not the same as just ending the program altogether, but the net result was that you made essentially the same amount of sales and paid less to do so. So that is a win. Thank you for sharing that. That's awesome. Jeff Zenick says, I got the report on my store, looked it over. On my second account where I sell my art, there was no report because it isn't a store, which I would like to see what it would have said. Yep. Media Picker, welcome. You got here just in time for us to wrap this thing up today, but I appreciate you coming by. Did you get your promotion? Do you know yet? Kapow Eagle says, learned a valuable lesson last week when I failed to notice a default checked box on an eBay 15% off sale campaign to allow other listings to be included if they qualify. It added more listings. Yeah, when you're doing, and my other issue is that eBay changes it from time to time, what the default is. Sometimes you'll go in and those boxes will be blank. Sometimes you'll go in and they will have gone ahead and clicked them for you. So you really got to pay attention, like every single time that you set up a new promotion. When I do mine, I usually, like I talk about, like I'll do tiers. So I've got everything in my shop that I've had for over a year is on sale at some level. The oldest stuff is on sale at the highest discount, and the more recent stuff at a lower discount. But I do check that box to have those things included if they qualify, because over the span of 30 days, which is typically what I run that sale for, items will move by age from one category to another. And I am okay if something is in the year to year and a half range and it goes into the year and a half to 2.5 range, for that to move up into the next category of discount. Because again, this is older inventory. I've already made my money on those buys. I'm just trying to clear some of this stuff out and generate some cash flow. I don't mind if it goes to the higher category. But that's a conscious decision that you need to make. And when eBay checks the box for you to do that, you lose control of that. I talk about all the time on the show. I am a huge, huge, huge proponent that everything should be opt-in, not opt-out. Everything should be optional at your discretion, not theirs. And eBay does almost everything as opt-out. They start a new program. You don't want to participate. You've got to tell them you don't want to participate. For me, it should be the other way. If you want to participate, you should have to tell them. But again, I'm on my soapbox. Can I please start over? This will be on Team Replay. It should be available in just a few minutes. Playroom says, I sell mostly on Poshmark, trying to build up eBay. I prefer Poshmark because eBay, I get so many returns. Never had any problems with Posh, but I don't do the delist, relist thing. Are you a clothing seller, I assume, mostly? I see a lot of clothing sellers on eBay that do get a ton of returns. We talk about returns all the time. That is so category specific. Which categories of items get big numbers of returns. I am super comfortable offering free 30-day returns because I sell mostly in media and almost never get return requests. I think I talked about a couple of weeks ago, in the last, whatever it is that you see on your chart, the last 90 days, I have 4 return requests, 2 of which were never shipped back. So in my case, I can get away with offering those free 30-day returns. It makes sense to be a top-rated seller and get the advantage of the discounted fees and so on. But if you're selling in clothing or electronics, which can be not only high return categories, but can be super expensive for returns and for return shipping, it's a completely different business decision. And it is interesting that the returns are higher on eBay than they are on Poshmark. And I wonder what the difference is in the buyers there. Callie Debs, welcome. Thanks for coming out. Kapow Eagle says, my report this week shows no comparative percent among sellers, but did show number of listings. They must have figured those percentages were way off. Yeah, see, there you go. They must watch this show. Media Picker, same in top 1%. eBay basically just recommended free shipping on everything. Yeah, it is what it is, I guess. But Big Dre says, not going to smile and shake eBay's hand while they charge me a promoted fee when it didn't get me the sale. That is just unethical. Yep, that's what I talked about at length in a couple of episodes, attributing the behavior of one person to potentially dozens, hundreds, thousands of people over the next 30 days is at best unethical. And as I mentioned earlier, I question whether it really would even be legal. It just seems like the wrong way to go. eBay's new model, you're all number one. So what's a little more fees? 100%. Nozatic says, on the report, it stated the average promoted was 6 to 8, dropped to 2 to 4. The average is now 4 to 5. And now we know how averages work. And that has been true. I talked about that before as well. Like when I set up my initial promoted listings campaign, I think I was at 3%, and it was recommending 4 on everything. I made the decision that I wanted to increase. I went to 5, and it started recommending 6. I'm now at 7.1, and every day it recommends 8. It doesn't appear to be based on what's actually happening in that category. It appears to be based on what you're currently doing in an effort to get a little bit more from you. And this is kind of the same thing. It's adjusting to what you're already telling it you're doing to try to get you to do just a little bit more. Just give us a little, just an extra 1%. And as soon as you do that, I'm sure it's going to increase it again. And I would be willing to bet that some of this is in fact being impacted by the number of people who have already either reduced their percentage based on what's coming in January or gotten out of the program altogether. I think Brandon Media Picker mentioned in a comment on one of my videos on this topic that when he ran his first report, there was a certain percentage of sellers who were promoting in that category. And a week later, when he ran it, that number had dropped. And I would expect that that number is going to continue to drop. And as I said last week, eBay, for their part, and to their credit, fully expects that to be the case. When we were in that little meetup with them, they were very open about the fact that they expect that sellers will leave the program and or reduce the amount of percentage that they're promoting at, and they're fully prepared to absorb that because there are enough sellers and enough new items that will fall under the promotions that they'll net make more money on it. So that's the world we live in, unfortunately. Big Dre says, don't forget, pay-per-click gets top priority now over all promotions. It's rigged, I tell you. Yes, and again, they were very clear about that. The top spot in search results on eBay come January 13th is 100% reserved for promoted listing priority campaigns. Unless there isn't someone running that campaign on that particular item, that is always going to get the top spot. Whether it's the best match search result or not, that's always going to be in spot number 1. And then spots 2 through whatever will be for those who are doing promoted listings general. And only after that will you start seeing organic listings. For my money, I feel like that's already how it's working because my sort is set for lowest price with shipping. And almost everything I search, the first couple of items are not the lowest price with shipping. So I feel like that's already kind of the default search result. Even if you select, you want to see the lowest price plus shipping, you're seeing higher priced items higher in the search results. And I can only assume that those are all promoted. So love eBay. Playroom says, I'm anti-Thanksgiving. I talk about this all the time. Before I started doing this, I spent about 30 years in retail. So the whole Q4 thing, Christmas, Thanksgiving, New Year's, through spending that amount of time in retail and kind of seeing the darker side, if you will, of the holiday season, really kind of soured me on the holidays. I'm not quite Scrooge, but I'm not a huge fan of the holiday season, just because I spent too much time on the wrong side of the counter, as it were. Media Picker says, after revamping my store, I have over 200 of my 1,800 listings that aren't promoted as they're either one-offs or one of a few listed, and readjusted prices accordingly. Congratulations. That's a big task, even for that number of listings, to go through individually and make that call. I can afford to not promote this item, and other items I need to because it's a very competitive field. There you go. Congratulations. Do I have a sound effect here? That's awesome. And well timed, right? Right at the holiday season to get that raise. Congratulations, man. That is good news. We will make this. I got a couple of comments here, and then we're going to call it a morning. Midget Gordon Ramsay, welcome. Sell some salvage coffee maker parts and get lots of returns. I suspect a lot of people trying to return their broken parts. Security stickers have helped reduce that. Yes, anything I sell that's electronics. I don't do parts typically, but I will sell, a VCR or a camcorder or a CD player or whatever. I always make sure that part of the listing is a picture of the serial number so that in the event I get a return, I can verify that I actually got back my item. Knock wood, I've never had a situation where I didn't, but I know sellers who have. They shipped out a good working unit and got back a not good, not working unit. And having either a security sticker or photographic evidence of the serial numbers and so on can help protect you against those kind of things. Playroom says Poshmark just doesn't allow returns unless you make a mistake. So if I include measurements and descriptions, I'm covered and they will deny returns. eBay, anyone can return for any reason. Yes, that is, again, that's a basic setup. eBay is really, they encourage, obviously, everybody to offer free returns up to 30 or 60 days. They try to incentivize you to do that through the Top Rated Seller Plus program, where you do get a discount on your fees. But again, in certain categories, the math just wouldn't make sense. You won't save enough in fees to accommodate all of the return shipping that you're going to get if you offer free returns. Just offering returns in general is going to be expensive because you have to then reprocess all of those items. It's just, in some categories, it's just not worth it. Although, as you say, eBay essentially is going to do it anyway. They almost always take the customer side on a return. So you're almost stuck having to do it. It's just part of the cost of doing business on eBay, unfortunately. But I did not know that Poshmark essentially doesn't allow returns unless the seller has made an error in their listing, or it's an item not as described or whatnot. Kapow Eagle says, congratulations to Media Picker as well. Great news for this time of year. Hopefully you're starting a great trend. Trail Chapters, thanks to you, I started to list some of my books on Etsy and have been surprised by the sales. There you go. Congratulations. It's, like I say, it's not a huge piece of my business. It's about 15%. That's 15% I wouldn't be making if I wasn't selling over there. And it's probably closer to 20% in terms of net margin, because of the things I list over there are the higher value, little better items. So I would love for Etsy to get anywhere close to eBay's numbers. That would be huge. But I'm very happy with what Etsy does in that category. And again, we're not competing against a ton of sellers, because there's a lot of sellers who don't even think about Etsy for vintage or antique books. So I'm glad it was helpful. I'm glad you're doing well with it. With that, my friends, we're well past an hour, so I'm going to go let my dog out, have a little bit of lunch, and then get back to some listing. Still have some things to get done today. As always, if you got something out of this, please do me a favor and hit that thumbs up. Thank you for coming out, as always, sharing with each other, sharing with me. I learned something almost every week on this show from all of you, and hopefully you get something from me as well. There's one more chat popped up here. Thank you so much. Look forward to hanging out on the lives. I appreciate you. And as I just said, I appreciate all of you guys too, very much. Remember, no live next week, day before Thanksgiving. Hopefully everybody has a great holiday and a great holiday weekend. There probably will be a podcast on Monday. So if there's any reselling news between now and then, there will be a show. Otherwise, until next time, my friends, it's time to sell. Thanks, guys. Oops, I don't have my assets up here. You have been listening to the Galaxy CDs Rocks and Flips Reseller Talk podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will catch you again next time.